Chapter 3 I Am Slughorn. Slughorn took a break from battle and let his teammates do some training. Honestly, he didn't see why Edison bothered with these bugs. Neville was a murderer, and that new one, Hannah, there was something about her Slughorn didn't trust. Something in her eyes. They were too sharp, too calculating, too cruel. Neville wasn't malicious, but he was dangerously careless. But Hannah, she was intelligent. Her mind was equal to Slughorn's, yet she clearly felt no more loyalty to him as he did to her. Some team this turned out to be. He watched as Neville went up against a trainer, then let Hannah step in to finish the job. They tag-teamed like this against a group of trainers along Route 3, just as Slughorn and Buckbeak did on Route 1. Slughorn sighed, thinking about Buckbeak. Their time together was short, but it was complete. They functioned as a team should. This, whatever you call it, wasn't a team. It was a grudging alliance, formed by a mutual tie to one trainer. If it wasn't for Edison, Slughorn would have paid those bugs back in kind for what they took from him. But Edison wouldn't have it. He loved all of his Pokemon, and they were loyal to him in return. Neither Slughorn nor the bugs would betray their trainer, so they had no choice but to work together. Still, that didn't mean Slughorn had to like it. The battle was over. As always, Edison threw a victorious hand in the air, congratulated his Pokemon, and shook the hand of the opposing trainer. He was a good sport, and most of the kids out here enjoyed the sport of a little friendly competition. Then something happened. The team-killing Weedle began glowing a vibrant white. Slowly his shape changed. Edison watched, eyes enraptured with excitement as his smallest Pokemon evolved into a Kakuna. Moments after Neville finished his transformation, he was scooped up in Edison's arms. The trainer swung him around, holding him high with pride. Hannah, who was already a full-grown Beedrill, looked satisfied as well. So Slughorn was alone during this celebration, as all eyes were on Neville. He sauntered off and found a nice spot on a cliff overlooking Pewter City. In the distance, he could see Pewter Gym. Yesterday, Slughorn single-handedly defeated the gym leader there. He was scared. He never fought against a gym leader before, but they had a reputation for being the most powerful around. Slughorn refused to let fear show on his face, however. Neville and Hannah watched from the stands, and he wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing him quiver. As it turned out, Slughorn was well prepared to handle the rock Pokemon there. Brock's Pokemon were admirable foes, and fought with honor, but could not win against their greatest weakness. The victory gave Slughorn great pride. As Edison shook Brock's hand, so too did Slughorn wish well to the sturdy Geodude and colossal Onix. Yes, Slughorn remembered that battle well, because for the first time he really felt strong. He was powerless to save Buckbeak, and although he fared well enough against wild Pokemon and trainers, gym battles were in a different league. To Slughorn, that Boulder Badge proved that he was capable of holding his own against much stronger opponents. He was strong, and he didn't need the likes of Neville or Hannah. Somehow, it became Slughorn's job to train with Neville. Now that the Weedle became a Kakuna, training was more difficult than ever. Neville could hardly move, nonetheless battle. The only way he could get stronger was to switch back and forth with either Slughorn or Hannah. Already Hannah had become worn out from the battles before, so it was up to Slughorn to pick up the slack. It was clear Neville was uneasy battling alongside Slughorn. Good. The Bulbasaur had no intention of making friends. The only reason he was helping at all was because Edison asked him to, and Slughorn always obeyed Edison. They approached the kid, a few years younger than Edison. Slughorn wondered what a kid like that was doing with a Pokemon anyway. Seemed too young to be a serious trainer. Edison and the youngster sent out their Pokemon, and Slughorn gasped. Neville, defenseless in his cocoon, was staring down an angry Spearow. This bird looked fierce and strong. Spearow were known for their temper and their appetite. The youngster smiled, feeling victory was within his grasp. The Spearow took to the sky and swooped at Neville. His shell visibly trembled. "Move!" Slughorn shouted, knocking Neville out of the way. The Spearow's talons dug into Slughorn's skin, and it pecked and bit at the tender bulb on his back. Slughorn cried out in pain. Birds were bad news for bugs and grass Pokemon alike. And this Spearow was strong. If Slughorn had to guess, this kid could contend with the gym leader. Only now, Slughorn didn't have a type advantage. In fact, the elements were working against him this time. Spearow's beak clenched deep around Slughorn's bulb and tore off a sizable chunk. Pain coursed through the Bulbasaur. He bucked with all his might, finally dismounting the angry bird, but his veins were ablaze with shooting pain. "Slughorn, watch out!" Neville yelled feebly from the sideline. The Spearow wasted no time. It took to the skies again and was swooping back for another devastating assault. Along with pain, something else ran through Slughorn's mind. Fear. He knew the odds, and they were bleak. This could be his last stand. The Spearow slashed him with its talons and let out a flurry of sharp pecks. Slughorn tried fighting it off, but his strength dwindled. Each attack was weaker than the last. He was getting disoriented, and soon couldn't even feel the onslaught of injuries as intensely, which, he realized, wasn't a good sign. In his lightheadedness, Slughorn thought he heard a voice. "Slughorn," the voice said. Ignoring the continued attacks, Slughorn glanced up to the sky. He couldn't see anything, but he knew that voice. Buckbeak?" he muttered. "Slughorn," the voice continued. It was definitely the voice of his fallen friend, which was also not a good sign. "This isn't your time, Slughorn. You have more to do here. Your purpose is not filled. You must lead this team to victory." "My purpose?" said Slughorn, although his voice was weak from fatigue. The Spearow still pecked and scratched as he had this dialogue with the deceased. Buckbeak's words breathed new life into the Bulbasaur. He steadied himself and forced his eyes to regain focus. "You're right, Buckbeak," Slughorn thought. "I'm not done here." When the Spearow flew at him, Slughorn hit it with a vine whip. The whip cracked the Spearow square in the beak, making it stumble out of the air and crumble face first into the dirt. The Spearow pulled its head up and glared at Slughorn. "Why bother fighting? You're dead meat, Bulbasaur!" It flew at him again, but Slughorn sidestepped the blow. "Don't call me that," he said. "My name is not Bulbasaur." Ignoring him, the Spearow made for another peck at his bulb. It never saw the vine whip flick out of nowhere. The Spearow collapsed again, stunned but not out. "I am Slughorn," he declared, "and I will never stop fighting. Do you know why?" Now it was the Spearow's turn to fear. The first signs of panic crept into his eyes. Slughorn took a step closer, bold and confident. Because I am living for two now. One life for me, and one for a friend I'll never see again. If it were just me, I might give up. But for that friend, I will fight on. Even when the odds are impossible, I will not back down to any adversary. Do you understand me, Spearow? The Spearow skidded away until its back was against a rocky wall. Something was happening. With each step Slughorn took, his body gained a bright shimmer. Some mysterious energy filled his veins, pulsing unfound strength into him. I am Slughorn, he bellowed, and I do not yield. Then, all that light and energy and power all burst at once, causing Slughorn to shudder down to the bone. It erupted in a shockwave, and when the dust settled, something was different. Slughorn was no longer a Bulbasaur. He had evolved. The Spearow frantically flapped, trying to get away. Before it could take flight, Slughorn rained seeds of poison down upon it. The Spearow flew, but didn't go far before the poison took hold. Its wings slackened, and slowly descended back to the dirt. Slughorn's vine whip cracked like lightning. A Bulbasaur might have been no match for the Spearow, but as an Ivysaur, Slughorn had strength like never before. The Spearow took the blow and toppled over. The youngster, who looked so deceptively little and weak, called back his Pokemon. Slughorn stood victorious. He stared off into the clouds flowing past. Thank you, Buckbeak. Alright, hashtag Slug Club! How's it going, everybody? Edison T. Crux here, and I hope you really enjoyed Chapter 3 of my Pokemon FireRed Storylocke. Now, the purists might notice a few deviations from what exactly happened in the playthrough. Slughorn didn't evolve quite as soon, a little bit later, etc., etc. Once in a while, a few minor deviations are gonna happen for the sake of better storytelling. Hope that doesn't turn anyone off or, upset anyone, but I think if you trust me, it's gonna make a much better story with just a few little tweaks here and there. Anyways, if you're anxious for Chapter 4, don't forget that patrons get first view. So if you really can't wait, head on over to my Patreon, make any size pledge, and you'll be that much closer to the next chapter. Alright everybody, take it easy.